Have you ever watched a horror movie that didn't just scare you, but made you feel like something was deeply wrong long after the credits rolled? That's exactly what Longlegs did to audiences around the world. People walked into this movie expecting another serial killer thriller. They walked out disturbed, confused, and obsessed with one question. What did we just witness? Today, we're diving into the hidden meanings, psychological horror, disturbing symbolism, and the ending that left everyone searching for answers. And trust me, the deeper you look into Longlegs, the more terrifying it becomes. At first glance, Longlegs presents itself as a detective story. A determined FBI agent investigates a series of horrifying family murders connected by cryptic clues. But this isn't a typical crime thriller where logic slowly untangles the mystery. Instead, the film constantly reminds us that evil doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it hides behind ordinary faces. Sometimes it enters your life so quietly that you don't even realize you've invited it inside. One of the reasons Longlegs became such a cultural phenomenon is because it weaponizes uncertainty. The audience is never completely comfortable. Every conversation feels loaded. Every silence feels dangerous. Every smile feels artificial. You keep waiting for the traditional horror payoff, but the movie refuses to follow familiar rules. That unpredictability creates a unique kind of fear. Because the truth is, human beings are terrified by things they cannot categorize. We can prepare ourselves for monsters. We can understand criminals. But what happens when evil exists somewhere in between? That's where Longlegs thrives. The FBI agent at the center of this story isn't portrayed as an unstoppable genius. She's observant, intelligent, and determined, but she's also vulnerable. She carries emotional scars. She struggles with uncertainty. She constantly questions her instincts. And that's important. Because Longlegs isn't just about solving murders. It's about the psychological cost of staring directly into darkness. The investigation slowly transforms from a professional assignment into something deeply personal. Each revelation chips away at certainty. Each clue creates more questions. The closer she gets to understanding the truth, the less stable reality begins to feel. This reflects something very human. We all believe knowledge protects us. We think if we understand something, we can control it. But Longlegs suggests the opposite. Sometimes understanding changes you. Sometimes knowledge itself becomes the curse. Then there's the figure at the center of everyone's nightmares. Longlegs. Even before audiences fully understand him, they fear him. Why? Because of presentation. The character doesn't rely solely on violence. He relies on discomfort. His appearance feels wrong. His mannerisms feel unnatural. His voice unsettles people. Even when he's calm, audiences remain tense. This is psychological horror at its finest. Instead of asking, "What will he do?" the movie asks, "What is he?" Is he merely human? A manipulator? A symbol? A servant of something darker? That ambiguity makes him unforgettable. One fascinating interpretation is that Longlegs represents corruption entering ordinary life. Not through force, but through influence. Throughout history, people have feared the idea that evil doesn't arrive looking evil. It arrives looking harmless. It arrives through trust. It arrives through routine. And by the time you recognize it, the damage has already begun. The film repeatedly explores the destruction of the family unit. Homes, which should represent safety, become places of unimaginable horror. Parents become threats. Love becomes twisted. Protection becomes impossible. This reversal creates enormous emotional impact because it attacks our deepest assumptions. Home should be safe. Family should protect us. Children should be innocent. Longlegs dares to ask, what if those beliefs collapse? Another reason audiences couldn't stop talking about this movie lies in its atmosphere. Notice how fear isn't always generated by jump scares. Sometimes it's the camera lingering too long. Sometimes it's the uncomfortable silence. Sometimes it's a character saying something ordinary in a way that feels deeply unnatural. The film understands that anticipation often scares us more than payoff. Our imagination becomes the monster. And imagination has no limits. Let's talk about the religious imagery and symbolism many viewers noticed. Whether intentional or not, Longlegs frequently touches on ideas involving temptation, corruption, sacrifice, and fate. Questions emerge. Are people truly making choices? Or are they being guided toward destruction? Can evil influence human behavior without removing free will? If someone opens the door to darkness willingly, who carries responsibility? These aren't easy questions. And that's exactly why audiences continued discussing the movie long after leaving theaters. Because Longlegs isn't interested in easy answers. It wants discomfort. It wants uncertainty. It wants debate. One of the strongest themes in the film is inherited fear. Fear passed from one generation to another. Fear hidden beneath everyday interactions. Fear disguised as normality. Many people spend years carrying emotional wounds created during childhood. Experiences shape identities. Trauma influences decisions. Pain echoes through families. Longlegs turns that psychological reality into horror. It suggests that some monsters aren't external. Sometimes they live inside memory. Inside silence. Inside secrets nobody wants to discuss. As the investigation intensifies, viewers notice something important. Logic begins losing its authority. Traditional detective methods no longer provide complete explanations. Evidence matters. Facts matter. But they aren't enough. This creates a terrifying conflict. Modern society teaches us that everything has an explanation. Science. Psychology. Criminology. But what happens when reality refuses to fit into neat categories? That tension between rational thinking and unexplained evil drives much of the film's emotional power. Now let's address the ending. Without retracing every event beat by beat, the conclusion forces audiences to confront one devastating truth. Some victories come at unbearable cost. Closure isn't always comforting. Answers don't always heal. Sometimes surviving means carrying knowledge you'll never escape. The ending doesn't hand viewers a perfectly wrapped explanation. Instead, it leaves cracks. Unanswered questions. Emotional residue. That's intentional. Because fear thrives in ambiguity. If every mystery receives a simple solution, fear disappears. Longlegs chooses the opposite path. It trusts the audience. It invites interpretation. Did evil originate from one source? Was it spreading through influence? Were characters victims of manipulation? How much agency did they truly possess? Different viewers reach different conclusions. And that's part of the brilliance. Great horror isn't consumed once. It's revisited. Debated. Examined. Theories emerged almost immediately. Some viewers interpreted Longlegs as a meditation on generational trauma. Others viewed it as supernatural horror disguised as procedural investigation. Some argued that the true monster wasn't the killer at all, but humanity's tendency to ignore warning signs until tragedy becomes unavoidable. Others believed the film explored how obsession destroys identity. The more someone dedicates themselves to understanding evil, the more they risk becoming consumed by it. Each theory reveals something fascinating. People project their own fears onto the story. And that's why two viewers can watch the same movie and walk away with completely different experiences. Another hidden strength lies in restraint. Modern horror sometimes relies heavily on constant shocks. Longlegs exercises patience. It allows tension to breathe. It understands that dread accumulates. The audience isn't exhausted by endless noise. Instead, they're slowly pulled underwater. By the time they realize how uncomfortable they've become, escape feels impossible. That's craftsmanship. The performances deserve enormous credit as well. Characters react like people carrying invisible burdens. Fear isn't always explosive. Sometimes fear looks like hesitation. Avoiding eye contact. Second-guessing instincts. Trying to appear calm while internally falling apart. That emotional realism grounds the story. It makes extraordinary circumstances feel disturbingly plausible. The film also asks an uncomfortable question. How well do we really know the people around us? We assume familiarity equals safety. We trust routines. We trust appearances. But history repeatedly reminds us that darkness can hide beneath normality. Longlegs weaponizes that reality. After watching it, ordinary spaces feel slightly unfamiliar. Normal conversations feel suspicious. The world appears just a little less safe. And perhaps that's horror's greatest achievement. Not making audiences afraid during the movie. Making them question reality after it ends. So what does Longlegs ultimately mean? Maybe it's about evil. Maybe it's about trauma. Maybe it's about faith. Maybe it's about losing certainty. Or maybe it's about recognizing that human beings desperately want simple explanations for complex horrors. We want villains to look monstrous. We want heroes to remain untouched. We want justice to provide closure. But life rarely works that way. Longlegs understands that truth. It recognizes that fear often exists in gray areas, in unanswered questions, in uncomfortable possibilities. And that's why this movie continues haunting audiences. Not because of what it shows, but because of what it suggests. The possibility that evil doesn't always crash through the front door. Sometimes it waits patiently. Sometimes it smiles. Sometimes it whispers. And sometimes, by the time you finally recognize it, it's already far too late. So, what do you think? Was Longlegs purely a story about human darkness? Was there something supernatural operating beneath the surface? Did the ending provide answers, or did it leave you with even more questions? Let us know your theories in the comments below, because some of the best interpretations often come from viewers themselves. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into one of the most disturbing horror films in recent memory, don't forget to subscribe to Movie Story Recaps, share this video with fellow horror fans, and tell us which movie you want us to analyze next. Until next time, sleep with the lights on, and remember that the scariest monsters aren't always the ones hiding under the bed. Sometimes, they're the ones hiding in plain sight.